Welcome to this clash of titans between Veselin Topalov and Michael Adams. We're in for a treat with the classic Ruy Lopez, a battleground of deep strategy and subtle maneuvers. Topalov opens with pawn to e4, and Adams replies in kind. We see the main lines of the Ruy Lopez unfold as both sides develop their knights, and the classic Spanish bishop arrives on b5, putting the question to black's position. Both players continue with standard development. White castles kingside for safety, the rook comes to e1 to support the center, and black develops and kicks the bishop with the b-pawn, and white finds the only move to keep the pressure on. The bishop drops back to b3. This is a crucial move, preparing to build a big center with c3 and d4, a classic Ruy Lopez squeeze. The middle game takes shape. White builds the pawn center, and now we see the famous Ruy Lopez knight tour from Adams. The knight retreats from c6 all the way back to b8, rerouting to d7 to support the center. The pawn structure becomes locked. Topalov pushes with pawn to d5, closing the center, while Adams clamps down on the queen side with pawn to c4. The battle lines are drawn. Action erupts on the queen side. White challenges black's pawn chain, leading to a series of captures. Adams seizes the moment, and his queen infiltrates deep into white's camp, landing on the c3 square. A real thorn in the side. Topalov challenges the intruder with his rook to c1, and black's queen simply sidesteps, repositioning to the active b4 square. But here's a slip from white. Rook to b1 is an inaccuracy. It looks natural, but it misses a key threat. Black now has a golden opportunity to snatch the a4 pawn and gain a serious material advantage, but Adams misses it. Instead of grabbing the pawn, he plays the queen back to c3, and the chance is gone. The winning idea was to snatch the pawn on a4. After the rook defends on a1, the queen would sidestep to b4, and following bishop to d2, the rook swings to c3, and black is simply up a clean pawn. So, with the missed chances behind them, the game continues. Pawns are traded on the queen side, and both players maneuver their pieces. Black's rooks find some activity, landing on a2 and c2, creating some nuisance value. Topalov plays knight to f1, a quiet move to untangle, but he misses a killer blow. The stronger move was knight to c4, putting immense pressure on the center. If black captures the pawn on d5, white recaptures, and after rook takes the knight on c4, the bishop simply takes back on c4, and white is up a full piece. The position remains tense. Adams' knight hops into g6 and then finds a beautiful outpost on f4, a real headache for white. Topalov decides to clarify the situation on the b-file, trading rooks on b2, and queen takes the rook on b2 is the only move. A fantastic find by Adams under pressure. Here's the point of this precise recapture. If white tries bishop to f1, black has rook to a8. Now, if the knight lands on f5, the bishop drops back to f8, and the position is held together. Topalov is relentless, methodically improving his position. He repositions his queen and rook, and then lands his knight on the monster f5 square, putting black under enormous strain. Adams is forced into a passive defense. Now a knight leaps to a5, forcing the action. Black deals with the kingside threat, and white simply cashes in, capturing the bishop on b7. And, in response, pawn takes the knight on f5. A stunning recapture, and the only move to stay in the game. It shatters his own kingside pawn structure, but it's the best practical chance. The pieces fly off the board. White's knight takes the bishop on d8, black recaptures, and then Topalov takes on f5. The dust settles, and white is left with a deadly passed f-pawn and a clear pressing advantage. And here, under immense pressure, Adams makes an inaccurate step. The best defense was a radical one, giving back some material to relieve the pressure. The best try was knight takes the pawn on d5. After the rook swings to b3, the queen could slide to c8. White's queen moves to b1, and the knight returns to f6, winning a pawn and keeping the fight going. But in the game, Adams plays the king to f8, and this passive move gives white a free hand to build a winning attack, and Topalov immediately punishes the mistake. The rook swings over to b3, and the pressure is now immense. Now black decides to take the d5 pawn, but the timing is all wrong. This walks right into a devastating attack. The other knight should have taken on d5. After bishop to f1, queen to c8, pawn to g3, and knight to h5 would have been a much tougher defense. Instead, in the game, the knight from f6 takes on d5, and this is a blunder that allows white to land a crushing blow. There it is. Bishop to h6, check. The black king is suddenly caught in a deadly crossfire, but what a resourceful defense. King to e7 is the only move to survive. The king bravely steps into the center of the board to escape the immediate checkmate threats. Topalov keeps the pressure on, swinging his bishop out to a4, cutting off escape squares. Adams' queen shifts to a6, desperately looking for counterplay. White plays rook to b7 with check. It's a very strong move, but surprisingly not the most precise. It gives black one last chance to organize a defense by blocking with the rook. And this is the final decisive error. Black had one last chance to put up maximum resistance. The only move was rook to d7, blocking the check. After white captures the rook on d7, black recaptures with the knight, and following queen to b3, the knight hops to b6. Black is still worse, but the game goes on. But in the actual game, Adams blocks with the knight to d7, and this allows a sequence that wins the game for white by force. Topalov pounces, playing queen to b3 to set up the final attack. Black's queen tries a last-ditch effort from a5, but it's too late. Topalov makes a slight inaccuracy here, but it doesn't change the result. The position is completely overwhelming. The fastest win was bishop to g5, check. If the pawn blocks on f6, the bishop returns to h6. After a desperate check on e1, the king steps to h2, and white will soon win black's rook. In the game, though, Topalov simply plays king to h2. It's a quiet move, but the threats are still decisive. And at this point, Michael Adams resigned. White's attack is unstoppable, and he's about to win a decisive amount of material. A brilliant, complex strategic battle, ultimately decided by a few critical endgame errors. Topalov takes the win.